I am Vanessa, 32 years old, and last month I experienced the ultimate family betrayal over dinner. The house my beloved grandparents left me became the target of my golden boy brother Jake and my enabling parents. They always gave him everything while I worked for scraps. That night, Jake announced he was taking my house as if it was already decided. They never expected what I did next would leave them speechless. If you are watching this, drop a comment telling me where you are from, hit like, and subscribe for more stories about standing your ground. Growing up, my grandparents were my rock. When my parents were too busy focusing on Jake or pursuing their own interests, Grandma Elaine and Grandpa Howard stepped in to provide the stability I needed. They lived in a modest three-bedroom craftsman-style home in a quiet neighborhood with a garden that Grandma tended with love and a workshop where Grandpa taught me how to fix almost anything. Every weekend, and many weeknights, when my parents were too busy, I stayed with them learning life skills and feeling truly valued. My parents, Diana and George, always made it clear that Jake was special. 3 years younger than me, Jake was the son they had always wanted. When he wanted expensive sports equipment, they found the money. When I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math, I was told to babysit to earn it. Jake received a car for his 16th birthday. I took the bus until I saved enough from my after-school job to buy a 15-year-old Honda with over 100,000 miles. Your brother needs more support, my mother would say. He has big dreams, and we need to nurture his potential. Meanwhile, my straight A's and extracurricular achievements were met with distracted nods or comments like, "That is nice, Vanessa, but try not to be so competitive with your brother." Grandma Elaine saw it all. One evening when I was 17, and crying over being told there was no money for my senior trip after they had just bought Jake a new gaming system, she sat me down at her kitchen table. "Your parents have blinders on, sweetheart," she said, pushing a plate of homemade cookies toward me. "Some parents just cannot see past their own expectations. Your father always wanted a son to carry on the family name, and your mother, well, she tends to gravitate toward whoever makes the most noise." Grandpa Howard was more direct. "You are twice the person your brother is, Vanessa. You have got grit. That will take you further in life than being handed everything." Their faith in me became my foundation. When it came time for college, I was unsurprised to learn my college fund had somehow been depleted. "We had some unexpected expenses," my father explained vaguely. Later, I discovered those expenses were investing in Jake's first failed business venture at 19, a sports memorabilia shop that closed within 6 months. I worked 30 hours a week throughout college while maintaining a 3.8 GPA in business administration. Meanwhile, Jake dropped out of 3 different colleges each time, with my parents making excuses and funding his next passion. By the time I graduated, I had student loans but also valuable work experience and connections. My grandparents attended my graduation beaming with pride. My parents and Jake arrived late and left early because Jake had a networking opportunity that evening. "We will make it up to you," my mother promised. They never did. I found my calling in real estate after college. The flexible schedule allowed me to help care for my grandparents as they aged, and my business sense helped me build a steady clientele. I learned every aspect of home valuation, renovation, and the legal elements of property ownership. This knowledge would prove invaluable later. When Grandpa Howard suffered a stroke 5 years ago, I was the one who arranged home health care, visited daily, and eventually moved in temporarily to help Grandma Elaine. My parents visited occasionally, usually with Jake in tow, who would spend the visit talking about his latest business idea or financial need. During one of these visits, I overheard my mother in the kitchen. "Dad, have you and Mom considered what will happen to the house? Jake could really use the stability. His roommate situation is not working out, and with his credit from the business loan default, he cannot qualify for a mortgage. I froze in the hallway, heart pounding. Before my grandfather could answer, Grandma Elaine spoke up sharply. "This house is our legacy, Diana. We will decide what happens to it based on who has shown us love and respect, not who needs a bailout." 2 years later, both my grandparents passed away within months of each other. In their will, they left their house to me with a letter explaining their decision. "You have shown us what it means to be family," they wrote. "This house has been filled with love for 50 years. We know you will honor its history while building your future." Jake scoffed at the inheritance initially. "It is just an old house that needs tons of work," he said dismissively at the reading of the will. "Have fun with the money pit." But to me, the house was everything. Every squeaky floorboard and vintage light fixture told a story. I spent the next 3 years renovating it room by room, doing much of the work myself using skills Grandpa had taught me. I preserved the character while updating the systems, creating a home that honored their memory while providing me comfort. The garden bloomed again under my care. The workshop became my home office. I made mortgage payments on the remaining balance and invested my savings in making it both beautiful and functional. What had been valued at $200,000 when I inherited it was now worth nearly $1 million in our increasingly popular neighborhood. Last month, my mother started calling more frequently, which was unusual. She asked detailed questions about the house framed as casual interest. "Have you finished the kitchen remodel?" "Jake was just saying how he loves those granite countertops you chose." "Is that extra bedroom still set up as an office?" Jake works from home now with his consulting business. Each conversation left me with an unsettled feeling, but I dismissed it as paranoia. Surely even my family would not be so blatant about their intentions. I was wrong. I decided to host a family dinner at my apartment rather than the house. Something about my mother's questions had made me protective of my grandparents' home, and my one-bedroom apartment downtown was closer to the restaurant where my father claimed to have a business meeting earlier that day. I spent hours preparing, cleaning my already tidy apartment and cooking my signature lasagna from scratch, along with a salad and garlic bread. I even baked an apple pie using Grandma Elaine's recipe. This dinner represented hope for me, a chance that perhaps at 32, I could finally have the warm family relationship I had always craved. I set the table with care, using the good dishes Grandma had given me and placing fresh flowers as a centerpiece. Soft music played in the background. Everything was perfect, ready for the family dinner I had pictured in my mind. The doorbell rang at 6:15, 15 minutes past the agreed time. Not surprising, my parents had never respected my schedule. "Vanessa." Darling, my mother Air kissed near my cheek, handing me a store-bought cake. The traffic was absolutely dreadful. "I told your father we should have left earlier, but you know how he is with his meetings." My father grunted a greeting immediately, asking, "Got anything stronger than wine, been a day?" Jake arrived 10 minutes later, not bothering to apologize for his tardiness. He looked around my apartment with barely concealed disdain. "Kind of small is not it," he commented, sprawling on my sofa. "How much are you paying for this place anyway?" "It suits me fine," I replied, setting out the appetizers I had prepared. "I like being downtown near work, and the building has great amenities." "Vanessa has always been practical," my mother said with a tight smile. "Never wanting too much space. Not like you, Jake, with your eye for potential." I bit my tongue and offered drinks. The subtle digs had already begun, and we had not even made it to the dinner table yet. As we sat down to eat, the conversation initially stayed in safe territory. My father talked about his work at the insurance company. My mother discussed her garden club, and Jake mentioned vague business opportunities he was exploring. Speaking of opportunities, my mother said, serving herself more salad. Vanessa, are you seeing anyone special these days? 32 is. Well, you know what they say about biological clocks. And there it was, the first direct hit of the evening. I am focusing on my career right now, I replied evenly. The real estate market is competitive, and I am building my client base. All work and no play, my father commented. You will end up alone with cats at this rate. Jake snickered. Maybe she could convert one of the bedrooms at Grandma's house into a cat sanctuary. The casual mention of Grandma's house, rather than my house, did not escape my notice. Actually, I said, I've been thinking about getting a dog. The backyard would be perfect for one. Oh, I do not know about a dog, my mother said quickly. They do so much damage to property. And speaking of the house, have you finished those renovations you mentioned? The bathroom and kitchen? Yes, they are done. The house is in great shape now. It must have such good investment potential in that neighborhood, my father remarked, eyeing me over his wineglass. Property values soaring and all that. It does, I acknowledged cautiously. The whole area has been revitalized. Jake leaned forward. You know, I was driving by there last week. That place has serious curb appeal now. You could probably rent it out for a killing. My phone rang before I could respond, and I excused myself to answer it, seeing my colleague Laura's name on the screen. Hey, Vanessa, Laura's cheerful voice came through. Just wanted to confirm everything's proceeding smoothly with the Patterson closing. All paperwork is in order, and we're confirmed for signing next Tuesday. That's great news. Thanks for the update, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. The Patterson closing was indeed happening, but it wasn't what my family would assume if they overheard. When I returned to the table, 3 curious faces greeted me. Work call, my mother asked. You really should leave that phone in another room during family time. Just confirming a meeting, I said vaguely. Anyway, how's Aunt Patty doing after her surgery? The conversation diverted temporarily, but throughout the main course I noticed how it kept circling back to the house. Questions about the square footage, the updated value, whether the neighbors were friendly. Each question seemed innocent enough in isolation, but together they formed a pattern that made my stomach tighten with apprehension. After dinner, as I served coffee and pie, Jake launched into a dramatic story about his latest business setback. His fitness app startup had failed to secure second-round funding, and he was now, in his words, between opportunities. The investors just couldn't see the vision, he lamented. And my roommate Brian is getting married, so he's moving out. The timing couldn't be worse. My mother patted his hand sympathetically. Everything happens for a reason, sweetheart. Sometimes one door closes so another can open. The meaningful look she exchanged with my father sent a chill down my spine. The pieces were starting to fit together, and I didn't like the picture they formed. After we finished dessert, my mother suggested we move to the living room area of my apartment for coffee. I noticed a shift in the atmosphere, a tension that hadn't been there before. My father kept checking his watch. My mother was arranging and rearranging the throw pillows on my couch, and Jake had a strange anticipatory energy about him. This is cozy, my mother said, looking around my living room with what seemed like calculation rather than appreciation. But it must feel cramped after spending time at the house. I like my apartment, I replied firmly. It has everything I need. Jake sprawled across my armchair, taking up more space than necessary. His posture had always been a power move, a way of claiming territory that wasn't his. Speaking of the house, he said with a growing smirk, I've been thinking about paint colors for the living room. I'm thinking a dark blue would look great with the existing woodwork. I froze coffee cup halfway to my lips. Why would you be thinking about paint colors for my house? The room fell silent for a moment. My mother cleared her throat and exchanged a look with my father, who nodded slightly. Well, Vanessa, she began in that condescending tone I knew too well, we've been discussing the family situation and we've come to a decision that makes sense for everyone. What decision? I asked already, feeling my heart rate accelerate. Jake sat up straighter, his smirk widening into a grin that made me want to throw my coffee in his face. Mom and Dad have decided I'm moving into your house, he announced, emphasizing the word your in a way that suggested it wouldn't be mine for long. It just makes sense. I need a stable living situation after this business setback. And you're doing fine with your real estate thing. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. But the expectant looks on my parents' faces confirmed I hadn't. You've decided, I repeated slowly, about my house. The house that Grandma and Grandpa left to me in their will. Now, Vanessa, my father interjected using his authoritative insurance manager voice, try to look at the bigger picture here. Jake needs a fresh start. That house is too big for just one person anyway. And it's a family house, my mother added smoothly. Your grandparents would want it to benefit the whole family. Jake nodded as if my parents' words settled everything. I'm thinking I'll move in next weekend. I can use the master bedroom, obviously, and convert that smaller bedroom into a home gym. The office space will be perfect for my new business plans. My mouth opened and closed words, failing me, as the audacity of their assumptions sank in. Where exactly am I supposed to live in this scenario? I finally managed to ask. My mother waved her hand dismissively. You're doing well with your job. You could easily find another apartment, maybe even in this same building. Or, there's always your old room at our house until you figure something out. The casual way she suggested I give up my legal property and move back into my childhood bedroom made my blood boil, but years of conditioning kept my expression neutral. Let me get this straight, I said carefully. You want me to give Jake my house, the house I've spent 3 years renovating, the house that Grandma and Grandpa specifically left to me, so he can have a fresh start after another failed business venture. Not give, my father corrected as if the distinction mattered. Share. Family helps family, Vanessa. You've always been so independent, but Jake needs support right now. And what about what I need? I asked. My mother sighed dramatically. Honestly, Vanessa, you've always been so selfish. Think about someone besides yourself for once. Jake is your brother. That word, selfish, hit me like a physical blow. How many times had I been called selfish for wanting even a fraction of what had been freely given to Jake? For wanting recognition of my achievements, for needing emotional support, for expecting to keep what was legally mine. Jake leaned forward, his expression shifting to one I recognized from childhood, the look he used when manipulating our parents. Sis, I know you're attached to the place, but I'll take good care of it. And hey, you can visit any time. Maybe Sunday dinners or something. Visit. My own house. That I owned. A memory flashed through my mind, Grandma Elaine sitting with me on the porch swing the week before she died. Vanessa promised me something. She had said, her hand clasping mine with surprising strength. Don't let them take advantage of you anymore. Your kindness is beautiful, but with some people, especially family, you need boundaries, strong ones. At the time, I hadn't fully understood what she meant. Now, watching Jake plan aloud which walls he'd knock down in my grandparents' beloved home, I finally did. The kitchen needs a complete overhaul, Jake was saying. Those vintage cabinets you kept are dated. I'm thinking sleek, modern, stainless, everything. Those dated cabinets had been handcrafted by my grandfather. I'd carefully restored them, replacing only what couldn't be saved. And that garden is taking up valuable space, he continued. I could extend the patio, add a hot tub. Much more practical than flowers and vegetables. My grandmother had tended that garden for 50 years. I still used her handwritten planting journal to keep the same flowers blooming in the same pattern she had loved. The workshop has to go, obviously, Jake said, scrolling through something on his phone. Wasted space. Could be a great media room. The workshop where my grandfather had taught me to build birdhouses and repair furniture, where I still kept his tools, each one in its designated spot on the pegboard he had installed. As Jake continued to dismantle my grandparents' legacy piece by piece, I felt a strange calm settling over me. This wasn't just about a house. This was about my entire life pattern with my family. Give, 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 until there was nothing left. When can I get the keys? Jake asked abruptly. I'd like to start measuring for furniture this weekend. The room felt airless as Jake's question hung between us. I remained silent, trying to process the magnitude of their entitlement. My silence was apparently interpreted as compliance. I can help you pack some essentials tomorrow, my mother offered already, pulling out her phone. I will make a list of what you will need to take to your new place. Everything else can stay for Jake. My new place, I repeated flatly. You mean the apartment I already live in? Or my childhood bedroom at your house? Whichever works for you, dear, she replied, not looking up from her phone. Though your old room is currently my crafting space, so we would need to make some adjustments. My father cleared his throat. About the mortgage payments, Vanessa. We think it is only fair that you continue handling those while Jake gets his new business off the ground. Once he is turning a profit, you two can work something out. I stared at him in disbelief. You want me to give up my house and continue paying the mortgage while Jake lives there rent-free? Family helps family, he repeated his standard line whenever they wanted me to sacrifice for Jake. It would only be temporary. A year, maybe 2 at most. Jake jumped in. The property values in that neighborhood are skyrocketing. Consider it an investment. When I eventually buy it from you, you will make a profit. Buy it from me, I echoed. With what money, Jake? Your fitness app failed. Your sports memorabilia shop failed. Your food truck venture failed. Your cryptocurrency investment scheme failed. What makes you think your next business will be different? That is uncalled for, my mother snapped. Everyone has setbacks. Jake is an entrepreneur. He takes risks. No, he does not, I countered, feeling years of resentment bubbling to the surface. You and Dad take the risks. Jake just spends the money and walks away when things get difficult. Jake's face darkened. Not everyone can be boring and safe like you, Vanessa. Some of us have vision. My phone buzzed with a text message, then another, and another. I glanced down to see messages from my cousins and an aunt. Why are you being so difficult about helping Jake read? Family should come first. Disappointed in you, said another. I looked up at my mother. Did you tell the entire family about this plan before even discussing it with me? She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I may have mentioned to a few people that we were working on a solution for Jake's housing situation involving your grandparents' house. Our grandparents, Jake corrected. They were my grandparents too, even if they played favorites with you. That was rich coming from the golden child of the family. I felt my chest tightening, my breathing becoming shallow. Classic anxiety response. I had experienced it often enough growing up in this family to recognize the signs. The downstairs bathroom will need to be completely gutted, Jake continued, either oblivious to or enjoying my distress. And that old clawfoot tub has to go. I am thinking a rainfall shower, maybe a steam feature. The clawfoot tub that my grandmother had loved, that I had painstakingly restored rather than replaced. The backyard is big enough for a pool, my father mused, warming to Jake's vision now. Always wanted a pool. Great idea, Dad, Jake enthused. We could put in a pool and still have room for a basketball court on the side. They were redesigning my entire property in front of me, erasing every trace of my grandparents and my own hard work. Oh, and Vanessa, Jake added casually, I will need your bedroom furniture too. My set got water damage in Brian's basement storage, and yours is nicer anyway. My bedroom set, the one I had saved for over a year to buy, the first real adult furniture I had ever owned. I need the dishes too, he continued, and probably the living room furniture. No point in you moving all that to a smaller place. As he listed more and more of my possessions he expected me to hand over, I felt something shift inside me. A lifetime of accommodating, of making myself smaller to keep the peace of giving in, to avoid conflict, crystallized into a hard knot of resolve. My mother must have noticed something in my expression because she reached over to pat my hand. I know change is hard, sweetie, but you have always been so good at adapting. Remember when we had to cancel your 16th birthday party because Jake had that soccer tournament? You were so understanding? I did remember. I also remembered crying alone in my room while my parents drove 3 hours to cheer for Jake, leaving me with a frozen pizza and a store-bought cupcake on what should have been a milestone birthday. When were you thinking Jake should move in? I asked, my voice unnaturally calm. Jake perked up, clearly interpreting my question as acceptance. This weekend would be ideal. Brian's fiancé is already bringing over boxes and it is getting crowded at the apartment. So I have less than a week to vacate my home, I stated. We can help you pack, my mother offered magnanimously, as if this was a tremendous favor and not part of a scheme to displace me from my own property. And I can rent a truck, my father added. We will make it a family project. A family project. How lovely. Like the family projects of my youth that inevitably centered around Jake's needs and interests. I will need the keys tonight, Jake said, extending his hand expectantly, so I can start taking measurements and planning the renovations. My father nodded approvingly. That is a good idea. Efficient. I am thinking of knocking out that wall between the dining room and kitchen, Jake continued. Open concept is still trending, right, Vanessa? You should know, being in real estate. The wall where my grandparents had marked the heights of grandchildren and great-nieces and nephews over decades, where my own growth had been faithfully recorded from age 3 until I left for college. My phone buzzed again. More relatives weighing in on a situation they knew nothing about except what my mother had chosen to tell them. The family grapevine in full effect, painting me as the villain before I had even responded to this ambush. I felt the physical symptoms intensifying, heart racing, palms sweating, that feeling of being cornered with no escape. But beneath the anxiety, something else was growing. Determination, clarity, the absolute certainty that this pattern had to end. I need everyone to return to the dining table, I said quietly. What for? Jake asked impatiently. Just get me the keys and we can wrap this up. The game is starting in 20 minutes. The dining table, I repeated, standing up. Now. Something in my tone must have registered because even Jake fell silent. One by one they followed me back to the dining table, exchanging confused glances. I walked calmly to the dining table, waiting until everyone was seated before taking my own chair. The lasagna dish was still in the center, half empty now, a symbol of the family dinner I had hoped would bring us closer. How naive that hope seemed now. Vanessa, what is this about? My father asked impatiently. We have already discussed everything. Jake needs the house, You will find another place. End of story. I held up one finger asking for silence and reached for my briefcase that was leaning against the wall. The leather portfolio had been a gift to myself when I made my first big real estate commission. Inside it held the documents I now needed. There has been a misunderstanding, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. A significant one. The only misunderstanding is why you are making this so difficult, my mother sighed. It is just a house, Vanessa. Just a house, I repeated softly. The house Grandma and Grandpa left to me in their will. The house I have spent 3 years renovating with my own hands and money. The house that holds 50 years of family memories. I paused. The house that, as of last week, no longer belongs to me. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me in confusion. What do you mean no longer belongs to you? My father asked slowly. With deliberate movements, I opened my briefcase and removed a stack of documents, placing them on the table before sliding them toward the center. I sold the house last week, I said simply. The closing is next Tuesday. Final sale price $850,000. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's face drained of color. My father's mouth opened and closed without sound. But it was Jake's expression that would stay with me forever. The entitled smirk vanished, replaced by shock that quickly morphed into outrage. You, what he finally sputtered. I sold the house, I repeated, tapping the documents. To a lovely family with 3 children who fell in love with the garden and the built-in bookshelves Grandpa made. They have promised to treasure it as much as Grandma and Grandpa did. My mother snatched the papers, rifling through them with trembling hands. This cannot be legal. You cannot just sell a family home without consulting us. Actually, I can, I corrected her gently. The house was left to me, not to the family. I am the sole owner of record. I have paid the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, and all maintenance costs for the past 3 years. Legally, I can sell it to whomever I choose. But we had plans, Jake stammered, his face now ashen. You knew we had plans. No, Jake. You had plans for my house that you never bothered to discuss with me until tonight when you announced them as a fait accompli. My father grabbed the papers from my mother, scanning them with the focus he usually reserved for insurance claims he hoped to deny. There must be a way to stop this. The sale cannot be final yet. It is not final until closing, but there would be significant legal and financial penalties for backing out now, I explained, falling into my professional real estate agent mode. The buyers have already given notice at their current residence, their children are registered for the local schools, and earnest money has changed hands. Cancel it, my mother demanded. Whatever it costs your father and I will help cover the penalties. I raised an eyebrow. The penalties would be in the tens of thousands of dollars. Are you offering to write that check right now? Her expression told me what I already knew. There was no money. There was never money when it came to helping me, only when it benefited Jake. This is a betrayal, Jake hissed, finding his voice again. You knew I needed a place to stay. You knew my business was in trouble. When did I know this, Jake? Perhaps you told Mom and Dad, but this is the first time you have mentioned it to me directly. And even if I had known, that creates no obligation for me to give you my house. We are family, my mother cried, tears starting to fall. Family helps. Family. I looked at her directly. Yes, family helps family. Tell me, when was the last time any of you helped me? When I was working 30 hours a week during college because my college fund mysteriously disappeared into Jake's failed business. When I was caring for Grandma and Grandpa during their final years, while you were all too busy. when I was spending every weekend for 3 years, restoring their house while Jake was out spending money. He did not have on businesses that never succeeded. No one answered. I continued. The Patterson family is moving in next month. They have 2 boys and a girl, ages 7, 9, and 12. The kids are excited about the treehouse in the backyard, the one Grandpa built for us that I repaired last summer. Mrs. Patterson is a gardener and promised to maintain Grandma's roses. Mr. Patterson is a high school history teacher who plans to use the workshop as a place to restore antique books, a hobby Grandpa would have loved. Jake slammed his fist on the table, causing the dishes to rattle. You had no right. That house should have gone to me in the first place. Grandma and Grandpa only left it to you because you manipulated them when they were old and confused. That accusation, so wildly unfair, should have hurt. Instead, it confirmed I had made the right decision. They left it to me because I was there for them, Jake. Because I showed them love and respect, not just when I wanted something, but consistently for years. I am calling a lawyer, my father announced, pulling out his phone. There has to be a way to contest this sale. Feel free, I replied calmly. But you should know that the will was properly executed and witnessed. I have owned the house outright for 3 years. The sale contract is binding and properly filed. Any lawyer will tell you the same thing. The house is mine to sell. My mother was openly crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. How could you do this to your brother, to your family? I did not do anything to anyone, I corrected her. I made a decision about my property. There is a difference. Where am I supposed to live now? Jake demanded, his voice rising to a near shout. The same place you were living yesterday before you decided my house was your solution, I replied evenly. Your housing situation is not my responsibility, Jake. It never was. The next hour was chaos. My mother cycled between tears and accusations. My father made several angry phone calls to friends with legal backgrounds, and Jake stormed around my apartment, alternately threatening and pleading. I will contest the will, Jake threatened. I will prove Grandma and Grandpa were not of sound mind when they left you the house. That would be difficult, I replied, considering their doctor, lawyer, and 3 separate friends served as witnesses to their mental competence when the will was signed. Not to mention, it has been 3 years, well past the period when a will can typically be contested. You tricked them, he insisted. You always were their favorite, always playing the perfect granddaughter while I was busy trying to make something of myself. Is that what you call your series of failed businesses, making something of yourself? The words were harsh, but years of bottled frustration were flowing freely now. Grandma and Grandpa loved you, Jake. They would have done anything for you if you had shown them a fraction of the attention you gave them when you needed money. My father slammed his phone down after his 3rd call. Richard says there is no legal recourse if the house was solely in Vanessa's name and a valid sale contract has been executed, he admitted grudgingly. Of course there is not, I said. I am a real estate agent. I know property law. You could have at least offered the house to family first, my mother sniffed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, given Jake the opportunity to buy it. With what money? I asked. Jake has no savings, bad credit from defaulted business loans, and no stable income. No bank would approve him for a mortgage, especially not for $850,000. We could have co-signed, my father argued weakly. Could you really? I challenged. Do you and Mom have enough equity and income to qualify as co-signers on a loan that size? Because from what I understand, you refinanced your own house to fund Jake's food truck venture 2 years ago. The flash of discomfort on his face confirmed my suspicion. And even if by some miracle Jake could secure financing, I continued. Are you suggesting I should have accepted less than market value to keep it in the family? make myself financially worse off to once again bail Jake out of his poor decisions. It is what family does, my mother insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. No, it is what I have always done, I corrected her, and I am done doing it. My phone buzzed with another text from a cousin asking why I was being so selfish. I turned it face down on the table. I suppose you have already spent the money, Jake said bitterly, probably on a vacation or jewelry or something equally frivolous. Actually, I said I have invested it. Part is going toward a commercial property downtown that I am purchasing with 2 other real estate agents. We are opening our own brokerage. Another portion is going into my retirement fund, which I have neglected while putting money into the house. And yes, a small part is for me to finally do something I have wanted to do for years. Which is what my father asked, suspiciously. Travel to Italy and Greece. Grandma always wanted to go but never got the chance. I am going to visit for her, take pictures of all the gardens she read about in her magazines. How nice for you, Jake sneered. Taking a luxury European vacation while your brother is facing homelessness? You are not facing homelessness, Jake. You have an apartment. You have parents who would clearly let you move in with them. You have options. You just do not like them as much as you liked the idea of taking my house. My mother stood up suddenly. We should go. Clearly Vanessa has made her decision without any consideration for this family. Actually, Mom, I gave it a great deal of consideration, I said quietly. I considered 32 years of family dynamics. I considered how many times I have been expected to give up what I earned or deserved to benefit Jake. I considered the pattern that would continue if I did not break it now. This discussion is not over, my father warned, gathering his coat. We will be consulting with more attorneys about our options. That is your right, I acknowledged, but the outcome will not change. The house is sold, the money is invested. This chapter is closed. Jake had been unusually quiet for the past few minutes, a calculating look replacing his earlier outrage. You know this means war, right? He said in a low voice, as my parents moved toward the door. The whole family will know what you did. The whole family already knows your version, I replied, gesturing to my still buzzing phone. But the truth will come out eventually. It always does. After they left, I sat alone at my dining table, surrounded by the remains of the dinner I had so carefully prepared. The silence was deafening after the emotional storm that had just passed through my apartment. I should have felt devastated by the confrontation, but instead a strange sense of peace settled over me. For the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my family and held it despite the pressure to cave. The next few weeks were difficult. As Jake had promised, he made sure every relative and family friend heard about my betrayal. Social media posts appeared lamenting how some people turn their backs on family in times of need. Aunts, uncles, and cousins called or texted, some angrily demanding explanations, others trying to mediate what they saw as a simple misunderstanding. I crafted a brief, factual response that I sent to anyone who asked. My grandparents left me their house in their will. After 3 years of ownership and renovation, I decided to sell it to a family who will love it as much as they did. The proceeds are being invested in my future. I am happy to discuss this further in person, but not via text or social media. Few took me up on the offer for an in-person conversation. Those who did often came with preconceptions, but left with a more nuanced understanding after hearing my side. Jake attempted to follow through on his threat to contest the will, but as I had predicted, no lawyer would take the case, given the time elapsed and the clear documentation of our grandparents' wishes. He then tried to claim he had invested in the house by helping with renovations, a claim easily disproven by contractors' receipts and the testimony of neighbors who had only ever seen me working on the property. My mother's approach shifted from anger to manipulation. "Your father and I are not getting any younger," she said during one phone call. "This stress is taking a toll on his heart. Is this house really worth damaging his health?" "My selling the house is not what is causing stress," I replied. "It is the family's reaction to it. I cannot control that." The most difficult conversation came a month after the dinner when Jake showed up unannounced at my apartment. "We need to talk," he said, pushing past me into the living room before I could object. "Come in, I guess," I murmured, closing the door behind him. He paced the small space, agitation evident in every movement. "I lost my apartment," he announced. "Brian moved out earlier than planned, and I cannot afford the rent alone." "I am sorry to hear that," I said cautiously. "Have you spoken to Mom and Dad?" "They said I could stay with them temporarily, but their house is too far from the city center for my networking needs," he complained. "I need to be downtown, close to where things are happening." I waited, already sensing where this was heading. "So I was thinking," he continued, "not meeting my eyes, maybe I could crash here for a while, just until I get my next venture off the ground. A few months at most." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. After everything that had happened, after the accusations and attacks, he was asking to move in with me. "No, Jake," I said firmly. "That is not going to happen." His expression darkened. "Why not? You have a spare bedroom that you use as an office. You could work at the kitchen table temporarily." "Because I do not want to live with you," I stated simply. "And because this pattern needs to stop, I am not your safety net." "You really are selfish," you know that he spat. "You have plenty of space and money now, but you will not help your own brother. I am not responsible for solving your housing crisis or funding your businesses," I replied. "That is not selfishness. It is having appropriate boundaries." "Boundaries," he scoffed. "That is therapist talk. Family does not have boundaries." "Mine does now," I said quietly. "And I think you should leave." He did, but not before delivering a final parting shot. "You will regret this, Vanessa. Someday you will need family, and we will not be there for you." His words were meant to hurt, to make me reconsider, but they only reinforced my decision, because the truth was my family had rarely been there for me in any meaningful way. I had always been the giver, never the receiver of support. The confrontation with Jake clarified something important. This was not just about a house. It was about breaking a lifelong pattern of enabling behavior that had damaged all of us in different ways. My parents had created a dependent son who believed he was entitled to endless support without responsibility. Jake had never developed the resilience or skills to truly succeed because failure never had consequences. And I had suppressed my own needs and worth to maintain a family peace that was ultimately unhealthy. Breaking this pattern was painful, but necessary not just for me, but for all of us. 6 months passed, bringing changes I could never have predicted. I moved from my downtown apartment to a smaller but charming craftsman bungalow in an up-and-coming neighborhood. At 1,000 square feet, it was half the size of my grandparents' house, but perfectly suited to my needs. I painted the walls myself, hung family photos, and planted a small garden in the backyard, including cuttings from Grandma Elaine's roses that I had carefully preserved before the sale. The real estate brokerage I opened with my colleagues was thriving. We specialized in helping first-time homebuyers navigate the complex market, something I found deeply satisfying. Each time I handed keys to a new homeowner, I thought of my grandparents and how they would approve of my using their legacy to help others achieve stability. I limited contact with my immediate family, a difficult but necessary boundary. The first 2 months I maintained a policy of not answering calls or texts that contained guilt trips or accusations. This meant I often went weeks without speaking to my parents or Jake, but gradually the tone of their communications began to change. My mother was the slowest to adjust, still attempting emotional manipulation whenever we spoke. I ran into Susan Johnston at the grocery store, she would say. Her daughter never goes more than a day without calling her. Some daughters are just more devoted, I suppose. Instead of defending myself or apologizing as I once would have, I simply changed the subject, or if necessary, ended the conversation. I have to go now, Mom. We can talk again when you are ready to discuss something else. Jake's business ventures continued their pattern of enthusiastic beginnings and rapid failures. The revolutionary fitness concept he had been developing turned out to be yet another app in an oversaturated market. When it failed to launch, he briefly tried multi-level marketing before moving on to cryptocurrency trading. Each time he approached me for investment, and each time I politely declined. You have all that money from the house just sitting there, he complained, during one rare family dinner I attended. It would not kill you to help out your brother. My money is not just sitting there, I corrected him. It is invested in my business and my future. And while I wish you success, Jake, I am not going to fund it. He stormed out, and my mother started to follow her usual script about family loyalty. But to my surprise, my father interrupted her. Leave it be, Diana, he said quietly. Vanessa has made her position clear and she is not wrong. That small moment of support from my father was unexpected and meaningful. Later that evening, as I was leaving, he walked me to my car. I have been thinking about things, he said awkwardly. About how we have treated you compared to Jake all these years. I waited, not wanting to interrupt what seemed like a difficult admission for him. It was not fair, he continued. We expected too much from you, and too little from him. I see that now. Thank you for saying that, Dad, I replied, genuinely touched. It means a lot to hear you acknowledge it. I cannot change the past, he said. But I am trying to be more aware now. Jake is living with us again, and I am insisting he pay rent and help around the house. He is not happy about it, but it is time he learned some responsibility. It was a small step, but an important one. My father was beginning to recognize the unhealthy patterns our family had established and was taking action to change them. Our relationship remained complicated, but this new awareness created space for something healthier to grow. My mother took longer to come around. The turning point came 4 months after the house sale when she showed up unannounced at my new home. I wanted to see where you are living now, she explained stiffly when I opened the door. I invited her in, watching, as she inspected each room with critical eyes. It is small, she finally pronounced, but you have made it nice. From her, this was high praise. We sat in my small but sunny kitchen drinking tea from mugs my grandmother had collected. The conversation was stilted at first, full of safe topics and careful phrasing, but as we finished our second cup, my mother surprised me. I saw the old house yesterday, she said, staring into her empty mug. I was in the neighborhood and drove by. The new family has painted the front door red. Grandma always wanted to do that, I recalled. Grandpa preferred the blue. My mother nodded. I remember. She paused. There were children playing in the yard. A little girl was on the swing Grandpa hung from the oak tree. The Pattersons have 3 children, I said. They loved that swing when they toured the house. It looks like a happy home, she admitted quietly, like it was when my parents lived there. In that moment, I glimpsed something I had rarely seen from my mother, genuine reflection, perhaps even regret. Mom, I said gently. I did not sell the house to hurt anyone. I sold it because it was the right decision for me and because I found buyers who would treasure it the way Grandma and Grandpa did. I know that now, she replied, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. We always thought of it as the family home. It hurt to see it go to strangers. They are not strangers to me, I explained. I got to know them during the sale process. Mrs. Patterson sends me photos sometimes of the garden or changes they have made. They are good people who love the house. My mother nodded slowly. Your brother is still angry. He had built up this whole plan around moving into that house. When it disappeared, he did not have a backup. That has always been Jake's problem, I said. He counts on bailouts instead of building foundations. To my surprise, she did not immediately defend him. Your father and I did him no favors, she admitted. We thought we were helping, but... She did not finish the thought, but she did not need to. For perhaps the first time, my mother was seeing the consequences of decades of unequal treatment. Our relationship remained complex with old habits sometimes resurfacing, but that conversation marked a turning point. We began to build something new based on mutual respect rather than expectation and obligation. As for Jake, his anger eventually gave way to a wary distance. He still occasionally tested boundaries, still made comments about the house and the money, but the intensity faded. When he secured a steady job working for someone else, rather than launching another doomed venture, I made a point of congratulating him sincerely. It is just entry level, he said dismissively. Not exactly CEO material. Everyone starts somewhere, I replied. The important thing is you are building experience and skills. He seemed surprised by my genuine support, perhaps expecting criticism or condescension given our history. That small exchange did not repair everything between us, but it opened a door to a different kind of sibling relationship, one based on reality rather than resentment. One day, nearly 6 months after selling the house, I received an unexpected invitation from the Pattersons to visit during their daughter's birthday party. The kids would love to meet the person who planted the beautiful garden Mrs. Patterson wrote. I hesitated, unsure if seeing the house transformed by another family would be painful, but curiosity and a sense of closure prompted me to accept. Driving up to the familiar street was surreal. The house looked both the same and different. The red door was new, as was the basketball hoop in the driveway, but the roses still bloomed along the fence, and the porch swing still hung in its familiar spot. Mrs. Patterson greeted me warmly. The kids are so excited you came. They love hearing stories about the family that lived here before. As I walked through rooms now filled with different furniture, different pictures, different lives, I felt a surprising sense of rightness. This was what homes were meant to do, pass from one loving family to another, each adding their own chapter to its history. In the backyard, children ran and played among the flower beds my grandmother had designed. The workshop, which Jake had wanted to demolish, now housed Mr. Patterson's book restoration projects alongside kid-friendly crafting supplies. The kitchen still had the cabinets my grandfather built now, painted a cheerful yellow but otherwise preserved. We loved the character of this house, Mrs. Patterson told me, as we watched the children play. So many new builds feel soulless, but this place has history. We can feel it in the walls. My grandparents would be so happy to see children here again, I said, surprised to find my eyes filling with tears, not of regret, but of gratitude. Driving home, I realized that selling the house had not erased my grandparents' legacy. It had extended it. The lessons they taught me about self-worth, hard work, and appropriate boundaries had allowed me to make difficult but healthy decisions. The home they created continued to shelter a family who appreciated its history. The values they instilled in me were now the foundation of my business and my life. That evening, I hosted a small dinner party in my new home. Not for my biological family, but for the chosen family. I had built close friends, colleagues, neighbors who had become confidants. As we laughed and shared stories around my small dining table, I felt a sense of peace I had rarely experienced in family gatherings growing up. My grandparents had given me more than a house. They had shown me that family is not just about biology or obligation. It is about respect, support, and love that does not come with conditions. Sometimes honoring family means setting boundaries that allow everyone to grow. Sometimes the most loving choice is the one that disrupts harmful patterns, even when it causes temporary pain. The house had been a wonderful gift, but the true inheritance was the strength to create a life of my own, choosing one where I valued myself enough to expect respect from others. That was a legacy worth far more than $850,000, and one I would carry forward no matter where I lived. What would you do if someone tried to claim something that rightfully belonged to you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your voice and standing your ground. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most powerful word in any relationship is simply no.